The old Phillips 66 sign creaked in the wind as I stood in the gravel parking lot, keys heavy in my hand. Johnson's Gas and Service Station, my father's life's work, and now, according to my brothers, my worthless inheritance. The peeling paint and weathered wood told a story of decades of neglect. But to me, this place held memories worth more than any dollar amount. My name is Emily Johnson, and this is how my father's worthless gift changed everything. I could still hear my brother's laughter echoing from yesterday's while reading Michael, the successful real estate developer, and James, the corporate lawyer, both dressed in suits that probably cost more than this entire property was worth. At least, that's what they thought. To my daughter Emily, the lawyer had read from Dad's will, I leave Johnson's Gas and Service Station, including all property and contents thereof. Michael had actually snorted. Dad's old junk pile, perfect for the grease monkey of the family. James had smiled that condescending smile he perfected in corporate boardrooms. Well, at least you can work on cars to your heart's content. Though you might want to sell soon, that land's worth nothing since they rerouted the highway. They'd been less amused when the lawyer continued reading. To my sons, Michael and James Johnson, I leave the remainder of my liquid assets to be split equally between them. Dad hadn't been poor, but he wasn't rich either. The liquid assets amounted to about $100,000 each, pocket change to my brothers, who both made their fortunes in the city while I stayed behind helping Dad run the station and getting my mechanical engineering degree at night. Is that it? Michael had demanded. What about the lake house? The stocks your father sold those years ago? The lawyer explained the proceeds were used to pay off some old debts. I knew about those debts. I'd helped Dad manage them after Mom died, watching him work 60-hour weeks to keep the station afloat and put 3 kids through college. My brothers had never looked back after graduation, too busy building their empires to notice Dad's struggles. Now, standing in front of the station in the early morning light, I felt closer to him than ever. This place had been his dream since he bought it in 1975. I'd grown up here learning to change oil before I could drive, doing homework on the beat-up desk in his office, falling asleep to the sound of him working late into the night. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Dad had always kept everything well-oiled, even as the business declined. The bell above the door chimed just like it had thousands of times before, but the sound echoed differently in the empty space. The interior was exactly as he'd left it the day he had his heart attack, coffee cups still on the counter, yesterday's newspaper open to the crossword puzzle he never finished. Dad had always loved crosswords, said they kept his mind sharp. Life's full of puzzles, he used to tell me. The trick is knowing which ones are worth solving. I ran my hand along the counter, remembering all the times I'd watched him help customers here. Dad knew everyone's name, their kids' names, their car troubles, their life troubles. He'd often accept payment in installments when times were tough, keeping track in an old ledger he never computerized. The office behind the counter was small but organized. Dad's ancient desk dominated the space, its surface scarred with decades of use. Old filing cabinets lined one wall, and a calendar from 3 months ago still hung beside them, marked with service appointments in Dad's precise handwriting. I sat in his chair, the leather worn smooth by years of use. The smell of motor oil and coffee still lingered in the air, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice. Check everything twice, The devil's in the details. Opening the desk drawers, I began the task of sorting through 45 years of business records. Dad kept everything: receipts, invoices, Christmas cards from customers, even the original purchase agreement for the station. As I worked, a pattern began to emerge. Certain documents were filed together, marked with small red dots in the corner. Others had subtle underlines or circles around dates and numbers. My father had never done anything without a reason. In the bottom drawer, I found an old photo album. Inside were pictures of the station from 1975, Dad standing proudly in front, Mom pregnant with Michael beside him. The station had been beautiful then, with fresh paint and bright signs. The highway ran right past it, bringing a steady stream of customers, but it was the background of the photos that caught my eye. Behind the station, barely visible, was an odd structure I'd never noticed before. It looked like some kind of metal framework, partially hidden by overgrown bushes. I frowned, trying to remember if I'd ever seen it. The backlot had been unused for years, gradually overtaken by weeds and scrub brush. Dad had always said we'd clear it someday, but somehow we never had. Curious, I grabbed a flashlight from the supply shelf and headed out back. The morning sun was higher now, burning off the mist that often settled in the little valley. The weeds came up to my waist as I pushed through them, following the path I remembered from childhood. The structure was still there, almost completely hidden by decades of growth. As I got closer, I could see it was some kind of derrick, maybe 20 feet tall. My heart started beating faster. Could it be? But before I could investigate further, a car pulled up out front, gravel crunching under its tires. Through the weeds, I could see Michael's expensive SUV parking next to my old pickup truck. "Emily," he called out. "You here? We need to talk about this place." I sighed, tucking the photo into my pocket. Michael never talked about anything. He announced, demanded, and expected compliance. But this time, something told me to keep my discovery to myself. "Coming," I called back, making my way through the weeds. As I emerged from the back lot, I saw both my brothers standing by Michael's car, looking completely out of place in their business casual attire. James adjusted his cufflinks before launching into his lawyer voice. "Emily, we've been thinking. This place is a liability. The environmental cleanup alone would cost more than it's worth. Why don't you let us buy you out? We'll give you, say, $25,000. That's generous considering." I looked at them, my successful, sophisticated brothers who never understood why I loved this place, or why I'd stayed to help Dad while they chased their careers elsewhere. "Thanks, but no thanks," I said. "I think I'll hold on to it for a while." Michael's face darkened. "Don't be stupid, Em. You can't run a gas station these days. The big chains have taken over. This place is dead, has been for years." "Maybe," I replied, fingering the photo in my pocket. "But it's mine now, and I'm keeping it. We'll give you $30,000, James offered. "Final offer. Sign the papers today." I smiled, remembering Dad's words about puzzles worth solving. "No, thank you. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." They left angry, Michael's tires spitting gravel as he accelerated too fast. But I barely noticed. My mind was already back on that structure behind the station and the meticulous records Dad had kept all these years. That evening, after hours of searching through files, I found what I was looking for: a document from 1975, marked with one of Dad's red dots. It was a geological survey of the property, including the backlot. My hands shook as I read it. If this was right, if Dad had known all along, I needed to make some calls. But first, I had to check one more thing. Moving to the old desk, I ran my hands along its edges, remembering how Dad would sometimes stare at it thoughtfully. The back panel felt different, slightly warmer than the rest of the wood. Pressing carefully, I felt a click. A small safe swung open, hidden in the desk frame. Inside was a single envelope with my name on it. As I opened the letter, Dad's familiar handwriting brought tears to my eyes. "Dear Emmy, if you're reading this, you've already started putting the pieces together. You always were the clever one, the only one who really understood the value of patience and hard work. What you found in the backlot isn't just an old derrick. It's proof of something I discovered the day I bought this station. Something I kept secret all these years, waiting for the right time. Your brothers will try to take this from you when they realize what it's worth. Don't let them. I've left you everything you need to protect yourself. The documentation is all there, if you know where to look. Remember what I taught you: sometimes the best things in life look worthless to others. That's what makes them precious. I love you, Emmy. Make me proud." "Dad, your daddy was one smart cookie," George said, shaking his head in amazement. He'd been Dad's friend for 40 years and the county's most respected environmental engineer. If anyone could confirm my suspicions, it was him. I sat back in his chair, my mind racing. If the geological survey was right, if Dad's notes meant what I thought they meant, then this worthless gas station was about to become the center of a storm. And my brother's laughter at the will reading would soon turn to something very different indeed. The next morning, I sat across from George Martinez at the local diner, watching his eyes widen as he reviewed the geological survey. "So it's real?" I asked, stirring my coffee. "The survey results?" "Oh, it's real. All right," he replied, pulling out his iPad and showing me recent satellite imagery. "See these patterns in the vegetation behind the station? Classic indicators. Your daddy's property sits right on top of one of the largest natural gas deposits in the state. Conservative estimate worth about $50 million in extraction rights alone." My hands trembled slightly as I set down my cup. $50 million? No wonder your dad kept it secret, George said, his voice low. "He must have been waiting for the right time or the right person. You think my brothers know? They will soon enough. Before I could respond, the bell over the diner door chimed. Michael walked in, flanked by two men in expensive suits. His face darkened when he spotted me sitting with George. Well, he said, approaching our table. Having breakfast with Dad's old friend. How quaint, Michael, I said coolly. You're a long way from your office. Just showing some colleagues the local color, he said, gesturing to the men behind him. These gentlemen are from Clayton Development. They're interested in revitalizing the area. I met George's eyes briefly. Clayton Development was known for aggressive land acquisition, especially in areas with natural resource potential. Sorry to interrupt your meal, one of the suits said smoothly. But we'd love to discuss some opportunities with you, Miss Johnson. Perhaps in a more private setting? Emily's not interested, George said firmly, gathering the papers. Michael's smile vanished. This isn't your business, old man. Emily, these gentlemen are prepared to make a very generous offer. Don't be foolish. I stood, placing a $10 bill on the table. Thanks for breakfast, George. I turned to Michael. You can tell your friends I'm not selling. Not now. Not ever. As I walked out, I heard Michael call after me. You can't develop that land yourself, Emily. You don't have the connections, the money, the expertise. But I was already heading to my truck, my mind racing. Michael showing up with Clayton Development meant one thing: he'd found out about the gas. I had to act fast. Back at the station, I dove into Dad's files with renewed urgency. The documents marked with red dots weren't just arbitrary. They told a story, one that Dad had been crafting for decades. Environmental studies, property surveys, mineral rights confirmations, changes in local ordinances, he had it all. But it was a series of letters from 1975 that revealed the truth. Dad hadn't stumbled upon the gas deposits. He'd discovered them before he bought the station. The previous owner had no idea what lay beneath the land, but Dad had done his research. He'd spent years quietly buying up mineral rights from neighboring properties, creating a claim to the entire deposit. The debts he'd paid off by selling the lake house and the stocks, those were actually strategic investments in securing those rights. My phone buzzed a text from James. Michael told me about Clayton. Don't be stupid. This is bigger than you can handle. Let the professionals take over. I ignored it. In the back of one filing cabinet, I found a locked metal box. The key from Dad's desk safe fit perfectly. Inside were the original deeds, the mineral rights documentation, environmental impact studies, and a thumb drive. I loaded it onto Dad's old computer. Years of correspondence with the State Environmental Protection Agency appeared meticulous, strategic, and damning for anyone who tried to contest my claim. Another text from Michael. Called Aunt Sharon. She agrees you're in over your head. Family meeting tomorrow. Be there. I smiled. Typical Michael, always bringing in reinforcements. But he had no idea just how far ahead Dad had planned. The next morning, I arrived at Michael's downtown office to find the boardroom packed, not just my brothers, but Aunt Sharon, 2 Clayton Development executives, and a full team of lawyers. Emily, Michael began, every inch the confident businessman, we're here to help you make the right decision. Clayton is prepared to offer you $500,000 for the property. That's more than fair. I set my briefcase on the conference table. Actually, I have a counter-proposal, James laughed. Counter-proposal? Emily, you don't even know what you're sitting on. You mean the natural gas deposits? I said quietly. The room went silent. Worth about $50 million in extraction rights, I continued. Yeah, I know all about those. Michael's face turned red. How did you? Dad told me, I interrupted. Or rather, he left me the breadcrumbs. I opened the briefcase and laid out the documents. Complete mineral rights to the entire deposit, environmental impact studies, state approvals, even a preliminary extraction plan that met all current safety standards. That's family property. Aunt Sharon protested. Your brothers should have a say. I pulled out one final document. They don't. Dad transferred everything to a trust in my name 5 years ago. It's completely legal. Right, James? James scanned the trust document with growing dismay. This is ironclad, he admitted. I turned to the Clayton executives. Here's my offer. I maintain controlling interest in the property and all rights. You provide the extraction expertise and infrastructure. We split the profits 70-30 in my favor with guaranteed commitments to environmental protection and local job creation. That's ridiculous, Michael spluttered. Actually, one of the Clayton executives interrupted. She can. And it's a fair proposal. He turned to me with new respect. Would you be willing to discuss terms? 4 hours later, I walked out of that office with a signed preliminary agreement. The Clayton lawyers would finalize the contracts, but the deal was set. I would retain control, leveraging their expertise exactly as Dad had envisioned. Emily, wait, James called, catching me at the elevator. How long have you known about the gas? Since yesterday. About Dad's trust in me? My whole life. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. You know, I added, you too could have visited him more. Asked about his work. Shown some interest beyond the dollar signs. We had careers to build, Michael said, joining us. So, did I? And a legacy to protect. The doors closed, sealing their stunned silence behind me.